Hello and welcome to this session all about grants. So I am going to talk to you today all about grant finance. And first of all, I just want to say, what is a grant? What actually is a grant? Well, a grant is a type of finance which is often gifted to you from a grant awarding body. Now, a lot of the time, this funding you have to apply for is very competitive, and it's for a specific project or impact area that you're working in. So grants can take a little bit of while. They're very hard to get, but you don't have to pay them back. Okay, so today we're going to talk all about a grant and what that process looks like. So the things that grants have most in common is that they have a very clear focus on target users or issues. So a grant often has a requirement or it has a priority area that it wants to fund, and it has a clear focus on how it is using its money. It also is often directly linked to impact and to outcomes. So what this means is a grant is gifted because it wants to see an organization make change or make impact or have clear outcomes on a certain area or on target users on society or the environment as a whole. Okay, so a lot of like organizations that give grants, they may have large pots of money, or maybe they don't have capacity to be able to solve problems that they see. So they gift grants to smaller organizations or bigger organizations that can help them achieve their impact goals that they have set. There's no repayment with a grant, right? So unlike a loan, you don't have a repayment deadline. It's not that you have to give this money back. A grant is gifted to you, but they will be very specific on where you have to spend your money. So you can't just have a grant and then, give yourself an entire salary. That wouldn't work. You have to actually say where you're spending the money and how you are spending that money too. There are specific deadlines with grants. Grants open and close. And funders will want it's an application process a lot of the time to get a grant, and there will be a deadline that you have to meet and submit that grant by that deadline. They do open and close at different times of the year, so you have to keep an eye on it. They may open for 2 months or 3 months, these application periods, and you have to apply by this specific deadline. And it requires patience because it is a very long application process. So don't give up, keep going, but it does take a little bit of time to actually get a grant. It's not like you're going to get a grant next week if you have a project in mind for January, for example. We're in December 2024 right now, so that's why I'm using that as the example. So today we're going to be looking at considering some four key areas. So for what? So what sort of do you actually need this funding for? Who and where can you find grants? How much can you apply for? And how do you actually apply? Okay, so we're going to be looking at those sort of areas. First of all, for what? So you want to be as clear as possible when you are applying for a grant. The reason why is that grant providers often have a specific area that they want to fund, and they have specific impact areas they are interested in funding. And so you need to meet these areas through your organization or through your project. So you really want to be very, very specific and have very clear and realistic impact goals. So what is it that you are going to achieve with this money and with this project? So quite often we frame grants around something like a pilot project or just a project in general, where you will say what you are going to do and what impact you're going to have. But you have a very clear timeline. So it may be 3 months, it may be 6 months, it may be 12 months. A grant can be for an organization, but at the beginning, at the earlier stage, generally, we encourage you to apply for a specific project. So, for example, even at Turn, we've been going for over 8 years now. I lead on the Turn Changemakers area, which is supporting social entrepreneurs. And I will apply for grants specifically for my project area at Turn. So yes, I am part of a bigger organization, but I still will apply for a grant which is for one project area at Turn. Now, you also want to have a very clear budget, okay? And this budget, like, it has to include all of the costs that you are going to use in your project. So I put some examples here. So you've got startup costs, salaries, or founder salaries. Some grants won't pay that, by the way. I think it's, wrong in my opinion, but that is, I don't make the grants. I don't give the grants. I wish I could. But yeah, some organizations won't give salaries. So have a, double check that when you're writing your budget as well. You can look at service delivery costs, so contractors maybe, you're hiring somebody, the grants would pay for that. Event cost, digital subscription, marketing and outreach, and then I'd always consider your overhead costs as well. And the reason why I'd consider your overhead costs is because sometimes, you end up spending money on things you don't expect. So having 10 to 20% overheads is quite a good way to build that into a project. And if you explain what your overheads might be, then grant providers are more likely to be willing to give you them. Sometimes they say no to overheads as well. All right, so that's sort of what you would spend money on for a grant, a very specific project area of your organization. How much? Well, you can apply for any range of funding. There are grants out there that are 50,000, 100,000, 500,000 pounds. But I think realistically, when you're starting out, especially in the earlier stage, I think you'd be looking between 2.5 to 10,000 pounds for a short pilot project. So I think something like as a rough ballpark, it's quite good to see like a 3 month pilot maybe between 3 and 5,000 pounds, a 6 month pilot maybe between 6 and 10,000 pounds, or a 12 month project might be between 10 and 20,000 pounds. Now these are total estimates, but I think one thing to take away from this slide is that you may be getting multiple grants at the same time for different projects, and that is okay. You can get multiple grants and run multiple projects. The thing is I think you want to be looking at smaller size grants to start with, rather than just saying, I want to fund my entire organization. And the reason why I say that is because I think you'll be more successful taking this approach. You can, of course, have one project which maybe is worth £30,000, and you could apply for 3 or 4 different grant funders for the same project. That makes up the £30,000. And you could tell the grant provider, hey, I need £5,000 as part of this £50,000 project or something like that. Okay, so you can do that. That's called match funding. And funders like that. They like to see organizations that are getting funding from different sources for the same project. But you have to make sure it adds up to the same amount. You couldn't run the same project for £5,000 and apply for 10 different grants for the same project, which is £5,000. That wouldn't be right. Because you'd already be doing the same thing, basically. Okay. So this is kind of just like a rough how much estimate that you can sort of take forward with yourself and with grants here. Who and where? So, this is really important to start thinking like, how do you actually get this money and where do you even find it? So, it's a good idea to think like, who can fund me? Can I have multiple funders? We've answered that question. Yes, you can. Where do you find funders? Where do you find grants? And can I apply? And I think what's really important with can I apply is you need to make sure you meet the criteria. And there's lots of different criteria, but one of the main ones is about your registration status. So a lot of the time, grants are for charities or for CICs with non-profit articles. What that means is they are kind of held back, these grants, for organizations that are not making a profit and that are using every single bit of their revenue to go towards impact work. So a lot of the time, if you're a limited company or if you're a sole trader, it's very difficult to get a grant, because a lot of grant funders won't want to fund a private company. Where can you actually find these? Well, there's a lot of different areas where you can find a grant, and there are different types of funders. And I think thinking about different types of funders is a great way of starting. So there are social foundation grants. So These ones are big foundations or organizations that have a very clear community focus, and they are often social impact focused, and they may be themed. And they are almost exclusively for non-profit organizations. So for social enterprises by guarantee, or but for charities. Um, Organizations like this may be unlimited, or the National Lottery is another one as well. These are big foundations that specifically are set up to fund charities and social enterprises as well. There are innovation grants. These are specifically for creative or new emerging industries. They're often in the sustainability sector, but also new research areas, tech being a very big one. And these are for both businesses and non-profits. Now, it is worth saying these innovation grants, they are very, very competitive. I mean, they all are, every grant is, but this one especially because this one is open to for-profit companies as well. And so you do just increase the amount of people that are applying for funding, and it's in a very competitive area as well, like tech. All right. So this, just as a heads up, but we did have somebody apply for the Innovate UK grant, and they got it. So it is possible, but you do have to have a very innovative and groundbreaking idea. So Nesta is one organization, but there's also, you can think about Innovate UK, government website as well will have that. You also have corporate foundation grants. So these are big foundations of large corporates. They are very themed, and again, they have a heavy focus on non-profits. So organizations like the Visa Foundation or Lloyd's Foundation, the Cooperative Community Fund is another one as well. So you can see there's three banks I have named, but it's often companies or corporations that have big for-profit, and they have surplus money that they put into a foundation. Okay, they can be good places to find some capital as well. And finally, you have statutory organisation grants, and that is organisations like government grants, local council grants. And this is for both businesses and non-profit, but again, quite heavily leaning towards non-profits. But what these are is, the council will have a pot of money, for example, but it may not be able to reach target demographics that it wants to, or it can't reach the impact it set itself for that year. And so it gives out some of its money to smaller local grassroots organizations that are working in the community to be able to reach the need of the people living in that borough, living in that area, which the council recognizes but would not be able to meet themselves. So yeah, the Greater London Authority, the Mayor of London, there are funds there as well, so you can have a look there. And we've had someone who was successful getting a GLA grant as well. So um, there's two things you should know that are really important, two words, when you're applying for a grant. One is called restricted grants or restricted funding. And what restricted funding means is you have very clear pre-agreed objectives on impact. And this is very common for startups or for first projects. And what this is it just means we will give you this money, but you can spend it only on a certain area of impact that we agree together. And so it's very restricted on what you can do. Now, that's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with a restricted grant. Restricted grants are not bad. It just means you can't spend it on anything you like. And then there is the unrestricted grant, which means it's very open. It's looser objectives on how you spend this. Maybe it's more for like your organization as a whole. And this is more common for people or organizations that are a little bit more advanced and have been trading for a while and have a proven kind of track record with the impact that they are having. Now you can scan this QR code because I think it's really important. Like, where can you actually find grants? And one place you can find grants is Charity Excellence. They have a free funding finder. It is super easy to use, this database. All you do is you go in and you basically have a little look as to how what grant you are looking for. So you go by a lot of specifics. You put in there, are you a social enterprise? Where are you based? You can put in keywords if you're working with a certain group of people or not. And then you just click search. Very easy to use. They have a little video you can watch as well. It's free to sign up. And yeah, it's great because it just gives you funding options. So I really recommend going on Charity Excellence. Now, there are so many different databases out there that exist. But this is one that I will use quite regularly. I find it one of the best ones for grants, in my opinion, and it's very well organized and quite easy to use. So this is what the funding finder looks like. So you can see there, like I was saying, you can put your location, the category, and the amount you're going for, any keywords in there, what city you're working in, and things like that as well. And you just literally click search, and it will give you a whole list of grants that you can apply for. Now, the other thing that you can use is ChatGPT, and ChatGPT is excellent at finding grants, but you have to be very, very specific. So I have asked it. I am a small London-based social enterprise supporting refugees and asylum seekers to settle into a new life in London. We are registered. We are registered as a CIC by guarantee and have one founder. I want to run a football project for 3 months, which is focused on befriending and healthy living. The project would start in January 2025. Can you help me find a grant for this project? So here I have been really specific. This is just an example, but I've told it I'm a social enterprise working with refugees and asylum seekers in London, that I'm registered as a CIC by guarantee. So I've given it my legal structure, and that I want to run a football project for 3 months, and it's focused on befriending and healthy living, and that it would start in January 2025. Now, ChatGPT and AI is amazing, but one thing it really does is it's a data bucket. So basically, it will take these keywords that I have given it, and it will search the internet, or it will use the internet database to then give me results based on these keywords. So it then found me these first three grant examples on the left. And I asked it, thanks, can you show me another three? And it gave me another three. So then I have 6 grants there, which I can then research and go and have a look and get into more detail as to whether I can actually apply for those grants, when the deadlines are, how much they are, and things like that as well. So ChatGPT is a good way to use it. It's not going to give you a grant straight away, but it is good for finding grants. Please do not use ChatGPT to write grants. Okay? Writing grants is a very personal process for each organization, and it should be personal because I think the organizations want to know about the people who are applying for the grant. They don't, and the organization, they don't want ChatGPT to write it. And I think that's probably quite a good reason often for rejection, is just using ChatGPT. It's very obvious when someone's used ChatGPT. We have a grant finance page at Turn. It has a lot of information about grants. What I would say is that this is being updated. So yes, you can use this page and have a look, but it is being updated as we go, and we hope we're going to build a bit of a database for grants, mainly with partners that we know we have a proven kind of track record of recommending people to apply for, and then and them getting successful results. So we are building out a database of grants ourselves, but it will take a little bit of time. So bear with us. It's not finished yet, but you can scan this QR code to visit Turn's grant information page, and there is a database in there with some grants. One such funder is Unlimited. Unlimited are a very we've had quite a number of people from the community apply for unlimited grants and get them. And they have a starting up, which is up to £8,000, and a scaling up to £18,000. And they are focused in kind of 4 main areas, which is access to employment, Funding Futures program, which is for young social entrepreneurs, healthy aging, and movement for change. Unlimited they provide a lot of other support as well, not just grants. They also provide one-to-one mentoring, legal support, financial, operational needs. They really have a big focus on supporting that social entrepreneur to develop a thriving social enterprise. One thing Unlimited do have a big focus on is financial sustainability. So what they want to see at Unlimited is they really, really want to see how your organization is going to thrive and survive, and not just survive off of grants. So you do need to have some kind of revenue model if you apply for an unlimited grant. Okay, so how do you actually apply, and what is the grant application process, and how do you make sure the grant's right for you, and what are the deadlines? So it takes time. So please, just to manage your expectation, the whole process is about 4 to 5 months. So quite often you will find and check the criteria. And one great bit of advice someone gave somebody else recently is that you know, you need to fit the grant priorities. There's no point applying for a grant that you don't fit. That's a waste of time. So, if a grant is looking at funding young people in Southeast London, and that's a big funding area as a grant giver, and you are looking at reforesting certain areas of the UK and improving environment livelihoods, don't apply for that grant because it's not a match, it's not a fit. So really check the funders, and that you meet their priority areas, but also check the criteria. So, are they only funding charities? Are they only funding social enterprises? Do you have to have been registered for 5 years? Have a look at the criteria and make sure you meet that criteria. Then you prepare it, and this can take a couple of weeks, but spend some time drafting your application, and please get feedback from people at Turn, your coach, your peers, and ask people to give you feedback. We are happy to help and to give you comments and to give you feedback. Once you have submitted it, it'll be reviewed, and that can take another couple of weeks. And then you may get invited to an application, an interview. Sometimes they will ask for an interview, which can take another couple of weeks, but that depends. And then there's often a decision, which will be made between 4 to 8 weeks. Now, sometimes the interview round is there, sometimes it's not. You may get rejected earlier, you may get rejected later, you may go all the way through and then be accepted. And if you are accepted, it can still take a couple of weeks to get the money. So we just want to say that this does take time. So, work with it, but a grant can be between 3 and 5 months. I recently wrote a grant. It took me 5 months to put together and to write and to go through the application process and to have back and forth with the organization, and it got rejected. So, it's not a great feeling when it happens, but it does happen. So, it can take a long time, this process. Okay. So just, manage your expectations that it might take a long time. And, always check the requirements. Do you actually meet the requirements? Just triple check them, that you meet the funding requirements, because they will reject you based on one thing. And always check the deadlines, because if you submit one day after the deadline, they will not accept it. But also, if it says 300 words as a word limit for an application question, it means 300 words. It doesn't mean 310 words, it means 300 words. And sometimes they say characters as well, not words. So just double, triple check all of the criteria and check the deadlines, and please just have a look at all of those things that are that they require as part of the grant. So some good things to remember before applying for a grant, is your idea right for the grant? Does your project fit their priority areas? So there'll be funding priority areas. As I said earlier, does it fit that? Do you fit their formal criteria? So grants may ask you to have non-profit articles. Do you have non-profit articles, for example? Or have you been trading for less than 1 year? Or do you make a certain amount of money every year? So you have to meet their formal criteria that they are asking for. And to really check again, does your project fit their impact priorities? Does it fit with them? Have a look, have a look, have a look, and triple check. Go do the research about the grant givers before you apply. Are you at the right stage? Sometimes they want people early stage, sometimes they want people that have been training for a long time. So, are you at the right stage to apply for a certain grant or not? And that will just give you a really good understanding whether the grant is right for you. And it's okay if it's not. Like, don't worry, you can find another one. Because, I think you need to ask yourself that question, is it the right grant for me? Because, how big is the effort versus rewards? Like, is it actually worth the application? And if it's not the right grant for you, the amount of effort, you're going to put in is going to be huge for very little reward. So it's actually worth it. So always ask yourself that question. And maybe there are other more suitable grants that you can apply for. There's a lot of grants out there. So are there other ones you might be able to apply for instead? And sometimes the request amount is it right for them as well? Is it right for you? But is it too big? Is it too small? The amount you're requesting of funding. And does the timeline fit your funding distribution? Okay. So, it takes a long time to get a grant. Does it fit within your timelines? And just to manage your expectations, there could be 100 people or 1,000 people, 100,000 people, a lot of people applying for a grant. So, if only one grant is being given and 100 people apply, then your chance is 1%. Yeah. So just remember that. Don't get downbeat about it. It's very competitive, this process. And the reason is that you will get rejected, and that is okay. Don't worry. Please, if you get rejected, keep going. It's okay. Keep going. The success rate is small. But don't worry, it's normal to get rejected. I mentioned earlier, we got rejected recently. It's totally fine. This happens. You use that rejection as a way to springboard, and a great way to use that rejection to springboard is always ask for feedback. You have the right to ask for feedback. They may not give it to you always, but ask them, why did I get rejected? Why did you reject my grant? And get that feedback, and you will be able to use that feedback to improve your grant application next time. Now, one thing that I have noticed is that grant givers often um, they ask for your application to effectively be framed in these three ways, and they will ask the same question in different ways. But what it is they're asking for your outcomes, your outputs, and your measurement. And what this means is your outcomes is kind of like, what are you trying to change? So what is it that you are trying to change? So are you improving self-confidence, for example? So let me just use an example that I want to improve the self-confidence of young people in East London. Okay, so that is an outcome that I am trying to do. And what is the output is what you are going to do as an organization. What is you going to do in this project? So, that's where you really tell them about what you are doing. So my outcome was improving the lives of young people, improving the self-confidence of young people in East London. My output would be I'm providing 3 one-to-one coaching sessions between March and July 2025. Okay, that is an output. It's very clear what I'm going to do to achieve that. And then the measurement is, how are you going to measure this? How are you going to make sure that you have, achieved the outcomes that you say you're going to do? And so with measurement, you need to be able to say, like, this is how I'm going to show the impact or the outcome that I am having. And the measurement may be things like, as an example, I could say, I am going to improve the self-confidence of young people living in East London through 3 one-to-one coaching sessions between April and July 2025. And I'm going to measure this self-confidence increase by running surveys before, during, and after the project with young people about their self-confidence before, during, and after the project. Okay, so I show very clearly how I'm going to measure that and how I'm going to be able to show this success or this impact that I am having, this outcome I'm having. Okay. So just remember outcomes. What are you going to change? Outputs. What are you going to do? And measurement. How are you going to measure it? A lot of grants will always ask for these three things, but maybe in different ways and not exactly this language. So just some top tips for writing a grant. Different funders, as I just said, they ask the same question, but they use different words. But you can use the same answer. So make sure you keep a Google document, maybe with some of the things that you can reuse. So you don't have to write the same thing every single time. You can just rewrite it and make it better each time. So, each time a little bit better, step by step. So with each grant, make your template text better, and increase your template document. And you may have a term business plan, which you can use for this, or similar documents that you can reuse the text. And so you don't need to always write from scratch. You can use what you've already done or what you've already written or previous grants. You can use those and you can rewrite them for another grant. And remember this outcomes, outputs, measurement. We're seeing it more and more and more. This is what people are, often asking for in an application. And so just remember those three words and remember that flow, because I think a lot of the time people will be asking for that. Um, so I just want to mention a little bit about how Turn supports you in applying for grants. So what Turn does is, we do help. We will support you. We will help you identify relevant grant options that you may be eligible for, and we'll help you to define your grant ask. We will assist you with understanding what it means and whether you fit the grant terms or not. And you can ask us to review the grant giver, and we can give you some feedback there. And we will review your grant application and we'll give you feedback. I do this a lot with people. I'm very happy to give you feedback before you submit. We will review any important written communication that you may have with grant givers, or if you're going back and emailing them back and forth and you want a second opinion on something, we can help you with that. We can also help you prepare for the grant interviews to give you the best odds for success. So, sometimes you can ask for questions before time. We can have a look at maybe there are other people in the community who have had an interview with the same funder, but we can help you to prepare for that. And if you get the grant, we can help you to develop a plan for how to use the funding. Now, what Turn does not do is we don't write the grant for you. We don't do the grant interview. We don't give you the grant directly. I wish, but we do not have money to give grants. And we don't have control over what the grantor's selection criterion process is. Okay. We don't decide whether you get the grant or how much you get, and we are not responsible for managing any reporting responsibilities that you may have. Okay. You will have to do that reporting back to the grant providers. So I hope that was helpful. Thank you for joining me and this little journey through grants. But yeah, I really hope that was helpful. And if you have any questions at all, you can email me on lucas@weareturn.org. And I am super happy to answer your questions or to help you understand grant finance a little bit more. And good luck in your journey.